Deep in the heart of the Midwest, there lies a lake so vast and mysterious that locals whisper of dark secrets lurking within its murky depths. They call it Lake Erie, a place where the water is always cold and the wind never stops blowing. One autumn night, a group of teenagers decided to venture out onto the lake in their small boat. They thought it would be a fun way to spend the evening, but they soon realized they had made a grave mistake. As they paddled out further and further into the heart of the lake, the water began to darken around them. It started out as a subtle change, a slight tint to the water that they barely noticed. But soon it was unmistakable. The water had turned a deep, inky black. The teens tried to turn back, but it was too late. Something was pulling them deeper and deeper into the lake. They heard whispers on the wind, voices that seemed to be coming from beneath the surface of the water. As they looked down into the depths of the lake, they saw something moving. At first, they thought it was just their imagination, but soon they realized it was something much more sinister. A creature, black as the depths of the lake itself, rose up out of the water. It had long, spindly arms and eyes that glowed with an otherworldly light. It reached out for the boat, its fingers scraping against the wood. The teens screamed and tried to paddle away, but the creature was too strong. It pulled them under, down into the darkening depths of Lake Erie. Days later, a search party found the empty boat drifting aimlessly on the water. They never found the bodies of the teenagers, but some say they can still hear their screams echoing across the lake on dark and stormy nights. And if you listen closely, you might hear the whispers on the wind, warning you to stay away from the darkening depths of Lake Erie. As the creature pulled the boat down, the teens felt their hearts race with terror. They had never seen anything like it before. Its eyes glowed with a fierce, otherworldly light that seemed to pierce their very souls. They struggled against its grip, but it was no use. The creature was too strong. The boat sank deeper and deeper into the murky depths of the lake. The teens looked out into the darkness, and all they could see was the creature's glowing eyes. They felt a sense of dread wash over them as they realized they were trapped, with no way out. Suddenly, they heard a sound, a faint humming that seemed to be coming from the depths of the lake. It grew louder and louder, until they realized it was the sound of the creature singing. Its voice was hypnotic, and the teens felt themselves slipping into a trance. They saw visions of strange, twisted creatures, writhing and wriggling in the darkness. They saw the faces of lost souls, crying out for release. They saw the depths of the lake, endless and eternal, stretching out before them. As the creature's song reached its climax, the teens felt themselves being dragged even deeper into the lake. They felt their lungs burning for air, and their limbs growing heavy. They knew they were drowning, but they couldn't resist the creature's power. Just when they thought all was lost, they felt a sudden burst of energy. They fought against the creature's grip with all their might, kicking and thrashing until they broke free. Gasping for air, they swam to the surface of the lake, and saw the creature disappearing into the depths below. They paddled back to shore as fast as they could, their hearts pounding with fear. They never spoke of that night again, but they knew they had been lucky to escape with their lives. From that day forward, they warned others to stay away from the darkening depths of Lake Erie, and the creature that lurked within. The teens returned to shore, shaken and traumatized by what they had experienced. They stumbled out of the boat and collapsed on the grass, their clothes soaked through with lake water. They sat there in silence for a few minutes, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Finally, one of them spoke up. "What the hell was that?" she said, her voice shaking. "Did you see its eyes? It was like it was looking right through us." Another one nodded. "I don't know what it was. but I don't want to go anywhere near that lake ever again." They sat there for a while longer, trying to calm their nerves. As they sat there, they noticed that the wind had picked up, and dark clouds were gathering on the horizon. A storm was coming. They decided to head back to their car and drive home, but as they walked back towards the parking lot, they felt a sense of unease. They felt like they were being watched, like something was following them. They turned around, but they couldn't see anything. Suddenly, they heard a sound, a low, guttural growling that seemed to be coming from the woods. They froze, their hearts racing with fear. Then they heard another sound, a twig snapping underfoot. And then another, and another. It was like something was coming closer, step by step. The teens turned and ran, sprinting towards their car as fast as they could. They could hear the creature following them, its footsteps pounding on the ground behind them. They finally reached the car and jumped in, slamming the doors shut behind them. They peeled out of the parking lot, the tires squealing on the pavement. As they drove away, they looked back and saw the creature emerging from the woods. It was huge, with razor-sharp claws and teeth like knives. It let out a deafening roar, shaking the trees with its fury. The teens drove away as fast as they could, their hearts pounding with fear. They knew they had narrowly escaped with their lives, and they vowed never to go back to Lake Erie again. Emily Blackwood had always been a quiet and reserved girl. She lived in a small town with her parents and rarely left the confines of her home. Despite this, she was well liked by her classmates, who thought of her as kind and friendly. But something strange began to happen to Emily. Her parents noticed that she was acting increasingly strange, talking to herself in strange voices and exhibiting erratic behavior. They took her to several doctors, but no one could figure out what was wrong with her. One night, Emily's parents were awakened by a strange noise coming from her room. When they went to investigate, they found Emily sitting up in bed, her eyes rolled back in her head and her body shaking uncontrollably. They tried to talk to her, but she responded in a guttural voice that was not her own. Terrified, they called a local priest, who immediately recognized the signs of possession. He performed an exorcism on Emily, but it only seemed to make things worse. The demon inside her began to speak in a clear and ominous voice, taunting the priest and threatening to harm anyone who tried to interfere. As the days went by, Emily's possession grew stronger. Her parents became increasingly desperate, seeking out more and more extreme methods to try and rid their daughter of the demon. But nothing worked. One night, Emily's parents were awakened once again by a noise coming from her room. This time, when they went to investigate, they found the room completely empty. There was no sign of Emily, and the only thing left behind was a faint, sulfuric smell. To this day, no one knows what happened to Emily Blackwood. Some say she was taken by the demon, while others believe that her body was simply unable to withstand the strain of the possession. But one thing is for certain, the town will never forget the possessed girl who disappeared into the night, leaving only fear and confusion in her wake. The disappearance of Emily Blackwood shook the small town to its core. People whispered about what could have happened to her and speculated about the cause of her possession. Some even began to fear that the demon that had possessed Emily was still lurking in the shadows, waiting to strike again. Emily's parents were inconsolable, and they soon left town, unable to bear the constant reminders of what had happened to their daughter. The priest who had performed the exorcism was also deeply affected by the experience. He had never encountered a demon as powerful as the one that had possessed Emily, and he was haunted by the fear that he had not done enough to save her. As time passed, the town began to move on, but the memory of Emily Blackwood lingered. Some people reported strange occurrences, like whispers in the night or a cold breeze that seemed to come from nowhere. Others claimed that they had seen Emily's ghost wandering the streets, her eyes black and her body contorted in pain. One night, a group of teenagers decided to investigate the abandoned Blackwood house, where Emily had lived with her parents. They climbed through the broken window and made their way up to Emily's room. As they stood in the empty room, they suddenly heard a faint whisper that seemed to be coming from the walls. At first, they thought it was just their imaginations, but the whisper grew louder and more insistent. They realized with growing horror that it was Emily's voice, pleading for help. They tried to leave the room, but the door wouldn't budge. Panic set in as they heard the demon's voice, warning them to stay away. Just as it seemed like they were trapped forever, the door suddenly flew open, and they stumbled out into the hallway. They ran out of the house, screaming and shaking with fear. They never spoke of what had happened to them that night, but they knew that they had come face to face with the demon that had possessed Emily Blackwood. The legend of Emily Blackwood continued to haunt the town for generations. Some believed that her ghost still roamed the streets, while others thought that the demon had found a new host. But one thing was for certain, the memory of Emily's possession lingered like a dark cloud over the town, a reminder of the terrifying power of the supernatural. As the years passed, the legend of Emily Blackwood continued to grow. It became a popular topic among paranormal enthusiasts, who visited the town in droves, hoping to catch a glimpse of the supernatural. The Blackwood house remained abandoned, but it had become a hotspot for ghost hunters and thrill seekers. There were even rumors that a secret society of occultists had taken up residence in the house, conducting dark rituals in an attempt to summon the demon that had possessed Emily. The town tried to distance itself from the legend of Emily Blackwood, but it was impossible. The memory of her possession lingered like a curse, infecting the town with a deep sense of unease. Some people reported seeing strange symbols etched into the sidewalks or mysterious figures lurking in the shadows. Others claimed that they had heard Emily's voice whispering in the night, begging for help. The legend of Emily Blackwood even attracted the attention of Hollywood. A horror movie was made about her possession, and it became a surprise hit. The town was flooded with tourists, eager to see the real-life inspiration for the film. But for the residents of the town, the legend was a constant source of fear and unease. They knew that there was something dark and sinister lurking in the shadows, waiting to strike. Some even began to wonder if the demon that had possessed Emily was still around, seeking revenge on those who had dared to challenge its power. One night, a group of teenagers decided to sneak into the Blackwood house. They had heard rumors of strange noises and ghostly apparitions, and they were eager to see for themselves. As they crept through the darkened halls, they suddenly heard a faint whisper that seemed to be coming from Emily's old room. They froze in terror as the whisper grew louder and more insistent. It was Emily's voice, begging for help. Suddenly, the door to her room swung open, and they saw a dark figure standing in the doorway. It was the demon that had possessed Emily, and it was more powerful than ever. The teenagers tried to run, but the demon was too fast. It pursued them through the house, its dark laughter echoing in their ears. Just as it seemed like all was lost, a bright light flooded the room and the demon vanished. The teenagers stumbled out of the house, shaken and terrified. They knew that they had narrowly escaped a fate worse than death. But as they looked back at the Blackwood house, they saw that the windows were glowing with an otherworldly light. They knew that the demon was still out there, waiting for its next victim. The legend of Emily Blackwood continues to this day, a dark reminder of the power of the supernatural. The town remains haunted by the memory of her possession, and some say that the demon still lurks in the shadows, waiting for its next victim. The truth may never be known, but one thing is for sure, the possession of Emily Blackwood will never be forgotten. Once upon a time, in a small town nestled deep in the heart of a forest, there was a cemetery called Ravenwood. Legend has it that the cemetery was cursed by a powerful witch who was buried there long ago. One dark and stormy night, a group of adventurous kids decided to explore Ravenwood Cemetery. They wandered through the rows of gravestones, reading the names of the long dead and imagining their stories. As they were leaving, they noticed a strange mist rising from the ground. Suddenly, a bolt of lightning struck a nearby tree, illuminating the cemetery with an eerie glow. The kids were terrified and tried to run, but they found themselves unable to move. Out of the mist appeared a figure in black, with eyes as red as fire. It was the witch, and she had come to claim the souls of the living. The kids screamed and begged for mercy, but it was too late. The witch had cursed them to remain in Ravenwood Cemetery forever. As the years passed, the kids' families searched for them in vain. No trace of them was ever found, and the town became known as a place to avoid. People whispered that Ravenwood Cemetery was cursed, and that those who entered would never return. Even now, on dark and stormy nights, people claim to hear the screams of the lost children echoing through the forest. And some say that if you listen carefully, you can hear the witch's cackling laughter as she claims more souls for Ravenwood Cemetery. So beware, young ones, and never enter the cursed grounds of Ravenwood Cemetery, or you may become its next victim. The curse of Ravenwood Cemetery was known to have been in existence for over 100 years. The people of the town knew the story of the witch and the lost children, and they all avoided the cemetery at all costs. The cemetery was located deep in the forest and surrounded by dense trees, making it even more ominous. Despite the warnings, there were some who dared to enter the cemetery. They were usually thrill seekers, teenagers looking for a cheap scare, or brave individuals who didn't believe in the curse. But they always regretted their decision. Some said that they saw the ghostly figures of the lost children wandering through the cemetery, while others claimed to have heard strange whispers in their ears. Some even reported being touched by an unseen hand or feeling a cold breath on their necks. There was one particular incident that stuck in the minds of the townsfolk. A group of teenagers decided to camp near Ravenwood Cemetery. They had heard the stories and thought it would be fun to spend the night there. But they didn't make it past midnight. In the dead of the night, they heard strange noises coming from the woods. They tried to ignore it, but soon the noises grew louder and closer. Suddenly, they saw a figure emerge from the mist. It was the witch, and she was angry. The teenagers tried to run, but they found themselves trapped within the cemetery walls. The witch cursed them, and they were never seen again. It was said that their screams echoed through the forest, and the town was never the same again. From that day on, the curse of Ravenwood Cemetery was taken seriously. People avoided the cemetery and warned others to do the same. The town became known as a place of mystery and darkness, where the dead never rested, and the living never dared to enter Ravenwood Cemetery. The legend of the curse of Ravenwood Cemetery was passed down from generation to generation. Parents told their children stories of the lost children and the witch, warning them to never go near the cemetery. Some even claimed that the witch's curse extended beyond the cemetery and affected the entire town, causing strange occurrences and unexplainable phenomena. As time went by, the town changed. New people moved in, and the old stories were forgotten. But the curse of Ravenwood Cemetery remained, and it seemed to grow stronger with each passing year. The town's once bustling center became deserted, and businesses closed their doors. People spoke in hushed tones and avoided going out at night. The town's economy suffered, and some even left to start anew in other places. But there were always those who were curious or foolish enough to enter Ravenwood Cemetery. They were usually visitors or outsiders who didn't believe in the curse. But they all regretted their decision. Some reported feeling a sudden drop in temperature or hearing strange whispers in their ears. Others claimed to have seen ghostly apparitions or felt a hand grabbing them. And some simply vanished without a trace. The town became infamous, and people began to avoid it altogether. The only ones who still visited were paranormal investigators and ghost hunters, hoping to uncover the truth behind the curse of Ravenwood Cemetery. But even they were met with disappointment. No matter how many investigations were conducted, no evidence was found to support the legend. Some even claimed that the curse was a figment of the town's imagination. But the town's residents knew better. They had lived with the curse for generations, and they knew that Ravenwood Cemetery was cursed. And so, they continued to warn outsiders and keep their distance from the cemetery, hoping to avoid the witch's wrath and keep the curse at bay.